a lot of things that have been making the news lately are proposed, at least, reductions in certain types of fertilizers and things that agricultural producers can use. And it's really got a lot of people very concerned. Maybe if you could just kind of explain how a 30% reduction would impact farm production right now.
Well, yeah, that's quite a crazy proposal. 30% reduction in fertilizer. It's hard to put a number on that because depends on what you grow. But if they do go with this, you're probably going to see 15 to 20% reduction on your cereal crops, your oil seeds. We have a lot of crops that we do grow that fix their own nitrogen, like all our pulse crops, lentils, pea crops. But I would say you're going to see a reduction for sure, Corey.
Yeah, and with that high cost of living, I mean, in general, we're looking, especially for things that are essential for us. I mean, if crops come down, prices are going to go up, and these are our food items. So, I mean, it's going to damage every consumer, not just the producers.
Yeah, I guess that's one silver lining is, our grain prices are probably going to go up. They're up pretty high right now, but as always, with Canada, with this carbon tax, we just keep getting beaten down. And you look at our neighbors to the south, it's business as usual in the States. They're not doing a 30% reduction on their fertilizers. So we're at the disadvantage again on the Americans.
Well, and the carbon tax is impacting agricultural producers as well. And that's something that frustrates as well. Of course, I was watching that the other day when the carbon tax rebates were coming to people, and a lot of Liberal supporters, see, look, it all comes back to you. It all comes back. It doesn't cost anybody anything. They don't realize that this impacts production and consumer products, and they are going to pay a higher price for things because of that tax, even if it's not direct.
Yeah, for sure. Like, fertilizers up, heating, like anything heating, our shops, fuel. If we have to dry grain this year, which it could happen, we have, since I talked to you last, we've had some pretty good rains. These crops look really good. And so we're looking at a late harvest, and, there's going to be a lot of natural gas used to try to get these crops dried down so that they can be stored properly. So yeah, operating costs are way up for sure because of the carbon tax.
Yeah, and those grain dryers, I mean, they look almost like a giant version of a clothing dryer, if I recall, and they're circular, but they burn a heck of a lot of natural gas. So the carbon tax is going to have a very direct impact on the cost of using those sorts of tools.
Yeah, you bet. We've been lucky the last few years. We've had some pretty good harvests and kind of an open harvest. We were done before things got too ugly, but I've got some crops that are at least a month away. For my canola is just coming out of flower. And so things are looks like it might be a long harvest this year. And we're going to be running those grain dryers for sure. Well, hopefully not, but it's looking that way.
Yeah. So, I mean, and as you pointed out, there's other ways with nitrogen replacement, different type of crops you can rotate, things such as that. And I mean, it reminds me of the energy sector too. Like people don't get credit for the activities they've already been doing to reduce emissions. Even if some of the reasons, you wanted to reduce the nitrogen, well, it's expensive. So if you can run field peas for a year and help replenish the soil, you'll do that. I mean, you've already been reducing some of the uses for these things just in a cost-effective manner, but you don't get any credit for that.
No, that's right. We, like our farmers, we're not farming like the 80s anymore. We don't work our land up. We're, it's no-till farming. We're doing precision farming, so and variable rate technology. So when these are high-tech outfits, and our farmers, these guys are, got degrees, and they've got a lot of schooling behind them, and they're putting this fertilizer where it needs to be. Soil tests are done every spring now. We're not just dumping fertilizer out there and hoping that we're going to grow a bigger crop. We can't afford it. Fertilizer this spring was about double of what it was before. So we can go to stuff like variable rate technology. We can reduce the amount of fertilizer we're putting where it's not needed. Like if you look at the Netherlands right now, we're trying to be like the Netherlands. They farm in a bathtub. They're below sea level, and they're about 16 times smaller than the province of Alberta. So it's a pretty intensive agricultural area. And, we're being compared to that. And, we're a mile above sea level in Alberta. And especially in areas like Vulcan County and in southern Alberta, that leaching of these nutrients into our watersheds is very low. We've got some good farmers out there. So I'm really scratching my head as to why, this is just a feel-good program for Trudeau. And it really makes no sense at this time. You know, we are evolving, we're trying new technology, but we have 8 billion people to feed, and people want big crops. And to grow big crops, you know, we got to put the groceries to it. And so we're putting the fertilizer down, and we're putting it where it's needed. And until we can do something different, this is just a really bad timing on this proposal.
Well, that's it. And you know, I wrote a piece on this a while back. I did some research, and you know, the human population in the last 100 years has gone up fivefold, but crop yields per acre in modern farms has also gone up fivefold. But I mean, things such as modern effective fertilizer practices, pesticides, and some other things are the reason you can get so much per acre. And as you mentioned, there's not an alternative. It's similar to kind of my earlier rant too about vehicles. Okay, you want to get all the gas vehicles off the road, fair enough, but you got to give us something else to get into, and it's not there yet. And just banning certain types of fertilizer use if you don't have an alternative, it could be catastrophic. I mean, they got to come up with the alternate first.
Yeah, you know, it was a good. I was listening to there's that ag radio. It's on Sirius XM, channel 147, and the ag PhD guy. He's always on about 1 o'clock in the afternoons. And somebody asked him what he thought of Canada. He's an American, but somebody asked him a question. What's his thoughts on this reduction? And he made a good point. He said that you know, farming. I don't think people realize that farming and forestry, we're a huge carbon. We sequester a lot of carbon. So a lot of carbon is taken in by the plant. So if you reduce the amount of fertilizer, you're growing less plant. You have less plant to take in that excessive carbon, which, you know, was a really good point. So, you know, we grow more crop, we're taking more carbon in as well. And I don't think people realize that farmers are one of the biggest. The industry really takes in a lot of that excessive carbon, and by cutting back, we're going to have less crop to take that in. I don't know if that's, you know, it was just an interesting point I heard yesterday. So
Yeah, it is, and I mean, everything's kind of integrated. The other thing is too, if more pressure is put on, I mean, we've got land that hasn't been developed agriculturally, and not just in Canada, but other parts of the world. And if a living can't be made, or if the prices are getting too high for those commodities because of some of these limitations, the incentive is there now to expand and cultivate more land then to try and keep up. And we've got you know, natural areas that could be threatened through this too. Like, this can have the opposite effect and actually make things worse for the environment, but they just don't seem to understand that.
well, that's a good point, Corey. You know, we got a lot of grassland, you know, out east in the eastern part of the Vulcan County, a lot of native grass that was broke back in the 30s. You know, a lot of homesteaders came up, and we've got places that should never be broken again. But it's like the organic farming argument. You know, if get rid of fertilizer or herbicides, fertilizers, insecticides, we could never at this time, unless we develop our technology better, we couldn't feed the world if we didn't have these products, and we would be ripping up more land than we should. All of eastern Alberta along the Saskatchewan border, you know, we'd have to break more land up, and it'd be catastrophic. You know, those guys tried it. They lasted about 10 years, and it went back to grass in a hurry because it's just not sustainable.
Yeah, there's a lot of sensitive wildlife populations out there: sage grouse, burrowing owls, antelope. I mean, they only have so much land left, really, that's unbroken that they rely on out there. And I mean, if the government bans us from, I guess, producing on that land, well, it'll save those critters, but then we still end up with a food shortage. It just seems to be such an inane policy they're pushing towards right now.
Yeah, you know, we're really going to have, you know, fingers crossed. I hope the hail cloud stays away, but excuse me, but you know, we're going to make up for last year. You know, I'm looking at my wheat this morning. I got a really nice crop coming, and those rains, there was a lot of areas that were pretty dry, and this really helps. So, you know, we're going to pick up the slack for the world on this grain shortage. So what a time, eh? You imagine if we had to cut 30% fertilizer. You know, you're going to see some big crop export this year out of Canada, thanks to how we farm and thanks to the weather. But yeah, I think Canada's really going to help out the world this year, especially with what's going on in the Ukraine. So yeah, things look good. I just hope, you know, these initiatives like this are really going to work against the farmer and the consumer.
Yeah, well, and right now, I mean, it's still proposed, but I mean, they're pretty solid about what they want to do, but they haven't said how or legislated anything formally yet. So, is there any movement on the part of agricultural producers to organize, push back, lobby against this idea? Or
Well, they've, I guess there's still a discussion period, and like you mentioned, we're obviously looking at worst case scenario, and a lot could change. A lot of the municipalities have started writing letters at the agricultural service boards to the Minister of Agriculture in Ottawa. But I've been an ag fieldman here for Vulcan County for 25 years. Letters don't seem to go very far anymore. They just kind of get shuffled in the filing cabinet. I think when the date gets closer and we know what's going to happen, I think you'll see guys wake up a little bit. I think it's in its infancy right now, so we're just kind of waiting to see what comes out. I don't know how if they do go forward with this and do have a concrete number to cut. Ag Canada has a skeleton of a staff since the Harper days. They've cut Ag Canada's staff by a lot. I don't know if they're going to have a fertilizer police going out, if they're going to audit our annual purchase of fertilizer. But yeah, I think right now I wouldn't get too worked up. I think what's going on in the Netherlands has maybe woke the world up a little bit. But we're, people are watching, and I guess we'll just see what unfolds in the next couple of years, Corey.
Yeah, and I mean, we want to keep it in the scroll at least and discuss it. Or, of course, if we don't, then they'll definitely impose something ridiculous, unfortunately. We have to. This slides under the radar. Agricultural producers are a minority among Canadians. I mean, there's only so many people now who do it. There's, a small family can manage a much larger area than it used to be, 100 years ago. But it also means it's a limited voice when there's pressures coming on. Something interesting, another fellow who's up in northern Saskatchewan that I know, and he's an agricultural producer, but he's saying, he's tired. He's kind of had enough. He was thinking of some more expansion and capital investment next year, but now he's thinking, maybe I'm just going to pull up and just retire and sell off and get out. And, these pressures have an impact even when it's a threatened policy change, before it even comes in. I mean, there just needs to be a little more respect shown to the people feeding us right now.
Yeah, well, a good example, Corey. I farm between Blackie Harrington country and about 100-year generation farm, just sold 1,000 acres, and it got into a bidding war. We're in pretty good farmland country, and it went for average just under $7,000 an acre for a dryland crop, and it went to the Hutterites. So that's where it's going. Big farms and the colonies. You just kind of, and I don't blame these guys. Same thing as your friend there. That's a lot of money for 1,000 acres, $7 million. I'm sure Trudeau and his capital gains will take half of it. But guys are getting bigger. The smaller guys are getting out. Between me and my brother, we have 1,000 acres, and by the time I'm done and he's done, we'll probably be done as well. So that's just the way things are going.
No, well, it's unfortunate, but we'll keep pushing. I mean, it's just so important to all of us. I mean, not just in the sad aspect of a multi-generational kind of, industry and lifestyle kind of falling by the wayside. Some of that's just changing times as well, but all the same, some of it is just bad government policy. That's just not a good enough excuse to make such changes like that. So, well, hey, it's never hopeless. We got to just keep pushing and defending, and maybe we'll get a good outcome eventually.
Well, and that's the big thing is I get, like, you've seen me on Twitter, I get so mad. But 90%, I guess you said earlier, 80% of Canada is 2 generations off the farm. And there is people that are savvy and follow what's going on in the world, but nobody knows how farms hardly work anymore. But they're quick to judge. I got into it last week, and I don't know why. You've seen me on there. I need to get off Twitter, but man, some of these people know nothing about agriculture. And they're a couple generations off the farm, but they are very good armchair quarterback farmers. And it's tough. They need to get out on the farm and come see how things work, see what we're doing. Most farmers would love to show the urban world, especially the left urban world, how things are done. Grassroots, we're losing grassroots in this country, in the world, but especially Canada right now.
Yeah, well, and unfortunately, a lot of those people and those willfully ignorant ones will suddenly realize it when their grocery bills go through the roof. But by then, the damage is already done, and it'd be better to prevent it. But I mean, hey, Twitter, it's an entertainment area. You just got to learn how to stir them up and then back off. And as per my coffee cup, Enjoy the liberal tears. If you can stir them up on there, use it as a vent. But I know it can be hard on us to get on there and get too wound up sometimes.
Well, Lee, you're a lot smarter at it than me. I go a little too far, and then I get up at 2 a.m. and delete everything I put on there.
Yeah. Well, I have my moments as well. All right. Well, thanks for coming on to talk to me today, Kelly. It's always good to have you on, and it's good to hear, that there's a good season at least building up, and let's hope the weather maintains. And, as you said, it's good for the whole world right now. We're in some pretty crazy times, and getting a lot of food out there into the world market is going to be good for a lot of people.
Yeah, you bet. No, I just can't believe how much better things got here this summer. There was no wind, as you probably noticed, just a nice summer, caught some nice rains, and it's going to be some pretty big cereal crops. Wheat crops are going to be big. Barley's going to be big. Lots decent hay. I don't think it was bumper crop hay, but we are really going to pick up our world grain ending stocks out of Canada anyways. Things look pretty good if we have a good harvest.
Right on. Well, we'll check in with you again down the road, and hopefully at that point you're talking about how great the harvest was.
Okay, sounds good, Corey. Take care.